Hi, this is Wookie from Mandala Studios. Welcome to the workshop. Today we're going to take you through how we made the foam antlers. So we start with an armature. Off we go. We're cutting the 5mm aluminium armature wire to approximately the right length required by the client. We put a little kink on the bottom so we can position it onto the head, and we're going to start bending its shape, trying to create a nice pair of horns, like roughly even. We put it on a head so we can get some positioning, so we can see the curves. It's quite tricky to do, get it nice and balanced, check for length. Then we tape the two together while we try and finalise the overall symmetry. Lots of tweaking and adjusting, passing it between us. And there we go, happy with the thing. Now we come to fabricating the main beam. This is all done with polyethylene foam in the form of pipe legging and back rod. So start off, you cut length of pipe legging in half, then cut it to the appropriate length, and then you're going to chamfer one end of it, taper it down so that in section it tapers off to a point. Then we're going to glue those two bits of foam around the armature wire using some EvoStick 528. It's a contact adhesive, so you just apply a thin layer on each side, leave it to dry. Then when it's touch dry, push it together and you get a nice firm bond. I'm applying the glue with a butter knife while Leah is making another pair. Once the glue's touch dry, you just position it around the armature and slowly, gently tease the foam into shape following the curves of the armature. You've got to be a bit careful because every time you touch it together the glue joins the foam together nicely. So just squeeze it, clamp it, push it, and you get a nice curved shape that should match your armature wire pretty soundly. Repeat for the other side. Now we've got the main beam tied up, we're going to put on the tines. To do that we're going to use some various thicknesses of foam, back rod and pipe lagging. You see, it's a similar principle, only this time using a spray contact adhesive, and just force the curve into the shape as you stick the two together after it's touch dry. We'll repeat this a few times with different thicknesses of foam and cut each one on the base to get the angles required to glue it onto the main beam. With the spray adhesive, if you want a better bond, use two layers, leaving it dry in between. You see we're just moving on to different thicknesses of foam, chamfer one end to get a point, spray glue, leave it to dry, then just push and twist the foam together to create the curve you want, and then angle the ends, bevels and cuts, just to get it to sit where you want onto that main beam. Now we're going to make some blender pieces which just make that web between the tines and the main beam. So to do that we cut some pipe lagging into 4, then cut a little scallop off each section to create a nice smooth curved piece. Then we just glue that up and we just put it into the corner place and just pull it round either side of the tine like that, so you get a nice sort of softer transition piece. Repeat that for every join and every part you find that looks like it could do with the transition softening out slightly. You can also use this to reinforce any of the joins onto the main beam that you think aren't going to be quite strong enough for your use case. So now we're adding the burr, that's the fluffy bit around the base. So to do that we take a bit of backer rod, cut one side off, glue it on, having measured it roughly, then put it round, and then just tidy up that last bit in place. Now we move on to sanding the whole thing. To do that we buzz over it with a power file. We're just trying to create a more organic shape to the whole thing so it's less perfectly tubular. So just buzz it over the whole surface, gently over the blended areas because there may be a void in the centre of those underneath. But take off any edges, any transitions, and generally just work over the whole surface nice and evenly, but not too evenly. Then once you've got that all sanded down, you just want to waft over it with a heat gun. That'll burn off all the little fuzzy bits and gently seal the foam, and you'll get a much nicer shape out of the whole thing, hopefully. Then we move on to burning the texturing with a soldering iron. In this case, for the burr, we're just stabbing the end of the soldering iron into that ring, just repeatedly all over, trying to create an organic thing. And we just burn some lines down on the pit where it burns into the skull, and a few lines going up onto the antler itself. Now, to coat these antlers, we're mixing some acrylic caulking with some water to create a creamy paste, and we're just going to brush that on quite thick, starting at the tip, working down. We work in sections so that we're not dealing with too much floppy foam at the end because it's a bit thin still. This will firm up the foam because it's a bit rigider than foam, and then once you've got it on quite thickly, brush over it with a stipple sponge to try and create a bumpy texture that antlers have. We're using the antlers on the desk you can see in the background as reference to try and get that texture, and we just go over it with a brush and then just stipple it and then add a few sort of striation lines with a stick. And there you go, that's basically the whole process of how we fabricate the antlers. In a moment you'll see a whole load of them racked up ready to dry. There you go. Thanks for watching, hope to see you again next time. Don't forget to like, share